Hello, everybody, and welcome to Philosophic Film Festival. We have a very interesting guest today with us, and we will be talking about our dear departed David Lynch, who will definitely leave a mark with his work on the film, on the film art, on the film language. And today we have someone who had done a lot of research on David Lynch and his work. So, who do we have today?
Hi everyone, I'm Özer Özkantar from Turkey. I'm an assistant professor at Gaziantep University Department of Film Design and Directing, and my PhD was about David Lynch and women characters in his films. But today, my focus point is not gonna be on women. Actually, we're gonna focus upon David Lynch's point of views related to his films, and also maybe some narration structures, cinematographic point of views. And finally, if we have time, maybe we can focus upon his very famous film named Lost Highway.
That's great. That's great. Welcome to our festival. But in a brief conversation before, you have mentioned, we both agreed that David Lynch mostly likes to present questions or to open up more ambiguous situations that incite the viewers to experience things in their own subjective way, and then possibly project some interpretations about what is going on the work. How have you come to that conclusion in your research?
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's closely related to the philosophy and his cinematic philosophy, actually. So I need to say that Lynch's films, and as a director, David Lynch, don't provide meaning, actually. He or his films always or frequently ask questions. In this way, his films, and of course, as a director, Lynch transforms the viewer into a kind of active thinker. So with this approach, Lynch's films actually breaks the classical narrative structures. I mean, he fulfills something unique. He doesn't get some support from classical narrative structures. Instead of this, he creates a sort of non-linear structure. And with this technique, we are focusing upon questions, not the direct meaning, not the answers. We're thinking about again and again about the films, and David Lynch leaves lots of space for multiple interpretations for the films, I think.
And you say that he gets support from classical narrative structure. So like, what would be then
Mostly.
the main? Yeah. So what would be the main drive? The main drive force that keeps the narrative flowing. What do you think?
Indeed, as an American filmmaker, David Lynch can't be classified as a Hollywood director. So yes, he gets support, a lot of motives from American cinematic structure, but he tries to break the rules. So when he breaks the rules, we face a kind of schizophrenic in structure. And some postmodernic, some surreal images surrounded us during his films. And I think his main motivation about this choice is creating something new against Hollywood, because Lynch knows Hollywood rules very clearly, and he wants to challenge these rules with a kind of different approach. So his choice related to nonlinear structure is closely related to his reaction or his challenge to American Hollywood classical explanation techniques. I think.
Mm. It's a good thing you mentioned Hollywood, because he had this strained situation when he tried to direct a Hollywood movie, his third film, Dune, which is this crazy masterpiece in its own but flawed and with a lot of issues, especially because of this conflict with the structure that is already imposed, for example, in Hollywood's narration. So even in his autobiographies and then biographies and interviews, he would speak about these flawed filmmaking in Hollywood, and after that he would get back to not home terrain, like smaller films, lower budgets, and he would go back to experiment more freely, where this pressure of stories we are used to in more structured forms, for example, taught to us through books like Save the Cats, for example, a famous screenwriting book in Hollywood. And he rejects these forms, right? As you say, like, he ends up these situations which can lead to schizophrenic states, and he experiments quite a lot with these things. And even if we go a little back with the techniques he uses in his first feature film, Eraserhead, I mean, he plays quite a lot with his early studies. He was doing painting, of course, and sculpture, so that's also very visible there. And even going even further, you mentioned before that to really truly understand Lynch, one to understand the student films of his early era. Why do you think that's the case?
Indeed, even if Mulholland Drive was the first film that I watched done by David Lynch, I'm a fan of David Lynch's short films, actually. And if you have a chance to watch his short films, probably understanding him, making out him, is gonna be more easier. Because when he was a painting student or cinema student, he sees something different about cinematic point of view. For example, his very outstanding film named The Grandmother, or another film named The Alphabet. All
Mhm.
these films are, closely related to dreams. They're like dreams. When you have a chance to watch the films, indeed, this is not a kind of film watching, but it's a kind of dream experience. So we have to say that David Lynch gets some help from the dream world with the reference to subconscious, of course. And when we get some backup, some support from the dreams, then we cannot talk about the daily life structures, or we cannot talk about the classical narration. He's getting up some postmodernic cinematic structures.
Mhm.
He loves surrealism. He loves dream world. He loves psychoanalysis, and he also likes using philosophical point of views. And with all these backgrounds, David Lynch indeed challenged American Hollywood rules clearly. And even if he did it, uh, he had lots of chances to make blockbuster films in the American sector, like Dune, like Star Wars. Indeed, he didn't do Star Wars. He rejected it, but uh, some Italian producers and American producers wanted him to produce the Star Wars. After that, he did the real genuine Dune. But when we read about David Lynch and his relation to Dune, David Lynch always said that Dune was not my film because after the final
Yeah.
cut, Dune turned into something so different. So it is not the film of David Lynch. It's so American, and David Lynch always rejected that. No, Dune is not my type. Dune is not my film. So
He's not even signed as a director in that movie.
yeah.
No.
So as you see, when we look at his short films and his cinematic point of view, we see three important categorizations. The first one, dream builds. And in our dreams, we cannot see a kind of classical narration. The second thing that I need to talk about is psychoanalysis. He really gets lots of Freudian point of views when he directs a film. And the third point that I need to highlight is that he really wants to challenge the American cinematic norms because, yes, he loves America, he loves Hollywood, but he's aware of the problems related to American film industry. So creating a sort of strange and ambiguous cinematic point of view means that rejecting the classical rules and creating a new way for American independent cinema. And I believe that with the help of David Lynch, now we have Sundance Film Festival. We have independent American cinema. And also there are some subgenres in American cinema like mumblecore, as you said, because David Lynch taught us to make low budget films. And with help of his efforts, now we have lots of different independent directors in Turkey, in your country, in Europe, in America, in independent cinema sector. So yes, he is unique because he is brave. He was brave. Unfortunately, we need to say he was brave. But I need to highlight that David Lynch did something so different that no one dared doing it for America.
It is a great point that you say that, he's an American film director, but he's really in the contradiction of how films are generally in the film industry there. And at the same time, he's quintessentially American in the uses. Like his setups are very American. And he always says that he inspires himself from the Americana style, from the suburbia, And I mean, Twin Peaks is only possible in a small American town. Like that atmosphere is very local for small American town, and he uses this environment to tell stories which are very different in structure. And I believe this is why we see the general rejection, I would say, or issue that the mainstream has with Lynch, for example, in which films of his are most successful in a more traditional understanding of success. For example, Elephant Man is the most, it has the Oscars, right? It has most awards. And basically it is structurally probably the most standard film that he made. And you mentioned something about the dream world and what that opens, and I would really like to go a little bit into that. For example, you say that what he creates is sequences, and dreams. If we move into psychoanalysis, dreams work a lot with symbolism, and symbolism and symbols have multiple definitions, meaning that depending on context and on other things, they can represent different things. So why do you think that he wants to play with these forms? What do you think he gains from it?
Um, while I was talking about his short films, I said the alphabet. Maybe you remember the name of the film, Alphabet. And then the alphabet and the story behind the alphabet is really interesting, and it's all about dreams. You know, the Peggy Lynch was his first wife. And one day, Peggy Lynch's cousins or nephews, not so sure about it, came to David Lynch, and he started to explain about her dream related to school fear. And David Lynch started to produce the film Alphabet with the help of this dream. So the alphabet is the dream of a girl who is afraid of school. And his first step related to dreams and maybe psychoanalysis went back to his short films. But, you know, as time went by, we saw lots of different forms in his films like this. As you said, maybe the Elephant Man was like this. Wasn't like this, because I think it's very easy to follow the Elephant Man. You know, I think we can say that Elephant Man was an easy film to follow. Also,
I would
maybe
agree, yes.
yeah, maybe the straight story can be also classified like this. Maybe Why the Dart can be classified as a not very simple, but not very impossible to follow when
It
we
has
compare.
it has a graspable structure.
Yeah. It is easy to follow indeed. We can understand the love story at least. But when we are talking about Blue Velvets, which one was my favorites, but also Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive, you know, they are something different. When we start to talk about these films, we recognize some approach coming from psychoanalysis. So we understand that David Lynch is interested in Freudian's point of view and dream worlds. Also, he gets some help from American cinematic relations in terms of film noir. So we can say that. We can say that Blue Velvets has a direct or indirect relation with film noir. So he creates a world, creates a universe, gets some points from Freudian's world, gets some points from film noir, I mean American cinematic point, not film noir, I think it is neo-noir, because more modernistic point of view. Some neo-noir, and then, you know, also he really gets support, really gets some aid from philosophy. And also, you know, indeed, his father and his mother was a very conservative people in terms of Christianity. After he was 35, he was interested in transcendental meditation. So this transcendental meditation or transcendentalism or American transcendentalism changes point of views related to films. And also transcendentalism closely related to nature, God, and some, you know, dreams or something like this. Also his interest into music with the help of Angela Badalamenti formed his cinematic point of view again and again. Probably within 2 or 3 minutes later, we're going to talk about David Lynch's very famous film, Lost Highway. I really love the film, but also the first minutes of the film is really crucial there and explains something very important related to your question. The film starts with David Bowie's very important song, which is I Am Deranged. And I am deranged means I'm lost. So he explains something, you know, very ambiguous. And he, as you said, he really loves creating questions, not giving answers. So a character, a shattered identity, a kind of man who is lost, who lost his identity or shattered identity, is his main point, his focus point. And also it is about psychoanalysis and dream world, I think.
I mean, you touch on a very big subject here in how he focuses his storytelling. I think he focuses his storytelling on the exploration of the self, and you also mentioned the exploration of the self, especially the separated self, the fractured self, the unemancipated self. Now, the self for its parts and for its manifestation, and this is where psychoanalysis helps us to navigate through the worlds that he's creating. And maybe we can segue from here to Lost Highway. Like, how do you think that the self plays a role in general in Lynch's films and in Lost Highway? So we can start analyzing that film as well.
Indeed, I think Lost Highway probably was one of the themes that millions of people tried to analyze but couldn't find great answers. And why this is why we are talking about David Lynch. But I'm gonna tell some important points related to Lost Highway, related to shattered identity or character development or his cinematic point of view. First of all, I have to say that Lost Highway is not a kind of straightforward film. And I always claim the same thing again and again. Lost Highway is not just a film watching. It is something philosophical experience. So within this complicated experience, David Lynch collapses time, indeed, and then the identities shifts, the realities are frequently questioned by the viewers, and within this fragmented non-linear narration, indeed, Lynch makes some references to Deleuze time images or crystal images, maybe, right? Because when we try to understand Lost Highway, it is not very easy to follow the characters, follow the script, follow the narration. And this cinematic experience is really philosophical. And I think Lost Highway is one of the best films, provides this philosophical experience within American industry. Because of this, I can say that Lost Highway and the characters in it, Fred Madison, one of the most important characters in the film, should be explained separately. All characters should be analyzed separately within this claim, which I say shattered identity. I really give importance to this term because the characters are not just characters. Sometimes we believe that they are real characters, but when we look at the symbols and as you say, metaphors creates something different, because the colors, the music, the cinematography, and some other elements David Lynch uses during Lost Highway all combine the meaning, but this meaning doesn't create a kind of clear message. All this ambiguity provides richness, but this richness is also not very clear. All these dark sides created by David Lynch makes him unique, and Lost Highway is one of the greatest examples of philosophical theme experience, I think, of course.
Yes, I mean, identity is something very central to all of his films, and the warring of identity and self-identity, the fractured self that we mentioned, and also exploring the identity in different circumstances, the repression of one's identity, the station of one's identity, and even if we just stroll across the film in Mulholland Drive, the two main female characters in some interpretations are the same character, basically. If you go, for example, in Wild at Heart, Sailor, he refers directly to his identity on several times in a jokingly manner. For example, with the snake skin leather jacket that he wears. There's this famous scene in the bar. The girl further back in Lost Highway, for example. In Lost Highway, the main conflict is this split that Fred has, where he has to go into this schizophrenic mode and explore his fantasies as a different character. And here, the role of the identity, we see, for example, the same actress playing both René and Alice, so his wife and the woman he's about to charm, to gain through his masculine manifestation, like this fantasy that he cannot really express in his married life. So playing the same character there, it really highlights this difference of identities that one doesn't have, right? So this fracturing of identities becomes important if we want to understand what he's attempting to show us. And Lost Highway, I think, is a very good example about this, because on several occasions, especially in the first act, he attempts to give us insight into the emotional experience, the inner world of Fred. First with the videotape. The videotapes that they find in front of their house, which is essentially, as we find out later, it's pretty much POV into the suppressed, masculine, unemancipated masculine that he has. Like, his ego is hurt, he cannot really so we understand later that he's going into this dark space where he murders his wife. He uses the VHS. Lynch is using the tape to give us this entrance inside his inner world. He does that also for a very interesting way in the scene where the police comes and they have the conversation about someone go into our house and all of that. It's interesting to see that there is this shot repeats itself several times throughout the first act, and it is when they sit on the couch and behind him there are paintings. They're set in such a way that they mimic the frames of a comic book, basically. And if you look into the paintings, you basically see his progressive, violent desires, and in the end, you also see the murder in one of the paintings change throughout all of these acts, throughout the first act. So she's always trying to put us into this subconscious space of the characters who try to explore their identities. So when you say about identities and how explores them, what have you found in your research about how does he navigate characters into their fractured state?
Yeah, indeed. While answering this question on Lost Highway seems very possible, because one of the best examples of shattered identity is Madison. And why he prefers this technique, why he creates characters as fragmented identities, and find an answer for this is not very simple to answer. Maybe we need to focus upon Mulholland Drive about this. Sometimes David Lynch's preferences related to fragmented scenes and fragmented identities relate to some technical issues, For example, while he was producing Mulholland Drive as television series, the producer of the channel didn't like the Mulholland Drive and his point of views. Because of this, David Lynch had to change all structures, all characters, and because of the final cut, Mulholland Drive turned into something very different, and the film created some extraordinary fragmented identities. So while we are discussing about shattered characters or shattered identities, I think we need to remember why David Lynch uses this, or some identities are created because of some technical problems for Mulholland. But for Lost Highway, actually, the situation is really different. He indeed completes his characters on purpose. He, first of all, plans everything about this, and while he focuses upon this shattered characters, his first motivation is, I think, creating a kind of different cinematic schizophrenic narration. Because I think for American cinema, I'm not talking about Hollywood, for American cinematic journey, Lost Highway was the first film related to schizophrenic nonlinear explanation. And for this explanation, you need to create characters who are a little bit different from the other characters. If we create Fred Madison as an ordinary man, it is not very easy to form a sort of extraordinary or crystal image. But with the help of this technique, I mean some psychoanalysis or some postmodernic points of views, he has a chance to form a kind of world full of characters. And I have to say another thing about David Lynch in terms of Lost Highway, related to masculinity and masculine crisis, as you said. When we're talking about Fred Madison and other characters within the perspective of psychoanalysis, we see lots of masculinity crisis, which was not very common in American cinema. In Hollywood, masculinity was seen as a form of power. But in Lost Highway, masculinity is like a shattered identity. So he, transformed masculinity. He transformed gender roles. And he also mentioned about masculine fears by referring to women characters. So creating a shattered character and, creating a sort of male character who shows his fears related to women is closely related to creating fragmented identities. Because if you create a kind of man who is very ordinary, it is not very easy to show his fears, show his, some kind of sexual desires or something like this. But within this technique, within this approach, David Lynch has a chance to point out the exact fears of masculinity. A kind of, I think, fear of betrayal, maybe, like this. So I think, this is my final sentences, sorry for interruption again and again, but this fragmented masculine structure is closely related to creating a different kind of masculine world in a cinematic point of view. In Hollywood, we see till super characters, Supermans, Batmans, Spider-Mans, all these characters generally, classified as a powerful, creatures. But in David Lynch cinema, man is not the winner. Man is the loser. Man is the man who is deranged, who is lost. And we need to understand masculinity within this fragmented or shattered character development structure in his films, like Lost Highway. Sorry.
No, it's a great addition to the conversation, because in many interviews he's talking about the facade of the American society. Like, he's very open about this, and he's very direct about this. And there is this famous opening sequence, if you remember, where the camera is going around this beautiful suburban environment, which was considered in his youth, I would say, as the success of life. Right? You go into you in the suburbia, you get your picket fence, you get your lawn, and you succeed at life, basically. So he explains in one of the interviews about subverting that entire image by just going with some shots first to establish the beauty of it, and then he goes underground where we see bugs and we see a lot of worms eating underneath the beautiful grass. A heart attack of one man in the neighborhood just brings the point home that like, all of this is just a facade. And I think in our discussion of the male identity as presented in Hollywood for a long time throughout the 20th century, which I agree that he sees as insufficient and sees it as a crisis. So you also talk about how he connects with the Nietzschean idea of the masked subject, and this fracturing of the self basically being hidden. I mean, the subject between these several different manifestations. Like, how do you see this connect together?
It's a great question. Thank you, actually. When we're talking about David Lynch, as you see, identity, masks, and fragmented self are the some outstanding themes that I need to focus upon. Lynch generally explores the illusion of oneself, which makes help him to reveal identity as multi-layered, shifting, and contradictory. So within this point of view, we have to say that Lynch's characters are often in conflict with themselves. Films like Lost Highway or like Mulholland Drive, we see it a lot. So identifies, the characters and some features related to the characters dissolve and reform and retransform, and it's all about some important points related to fragmented self. So in Lynch's cinematic point of view, we see something very important. Characters are changing radically. So almost all characters are not static in his films. They're changing, their identity is changing, their self changing, and we see lots of different reflections related to his characters and character development. And I think it's about his cinematic point of view closely. I think Lynch really gives importance to this because he really transforms the characters in his films. There is no one clear, static, or standard character in his films. Self is changing, identities are changing, and all characters transforming radically, remarkably. And I think 3 or 4 years ago, I was watching a documentary about David Lynch and his characters, male characters and female characters. I saw a kind of comments on this issue. The documentary claims that David Lynch forms some fragmented identities to create reality. Indeed, the sentences I mean is a little bit ambiguous and not clear. I know what I say, but I need to repeat what I try to say. It says the fragmented identities are the reality of David Lynch because his world, his universe is like a dream world, but one way he also connects the real world with this technique. This is his way of expressing his cinematic art form. Yeah.
Great. And how do you think this exploration of the self and the inner world reflects into his interest of transcendental meditation? Do you see any direct correlation with this?
Probably yes, because as I said before, he's like a practitioner of transcendental meditation, and his journey into this practice changed his lifestyle dramatically, and with his connection to Western metaphysics and Eastern philosophy, probably create some paths to self, introspection, emptiness, and also his interest related to meditation has opened a kind of dialogue or awareness or knowledge potential for his cinematic point of views. So indeed, David Lynch explores the illusion of identity, as I said before, in his films, but his journey into his cinematic adventure is changing periodically. When he faced or experienced meditation and transcendental meditation, his journey into consciousness is closely related to in his films. Especially, I can say that his film Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway proves this because there's so much philosophical. It's all about consciousness and his ideas, his beliefs create this, I think.
Okay. Roger, thank you very much. I really enjoyed hearing your perspective on all of this. And I asked all the questions that I had for you, although we can continue the conversation for a long, long time, I suppose. But it's really great to remind ourselves about him because he passed away just a few months ago, and again he will leave quite a lot of material, research and explored and addressed for future filmmakers and researchers. So it's always important to remind ourselves of the great filmmaker he was, and essentially he's that is not going away. Thank you again, and we see each other in right.